now with Peter Keith, the man with two first names,
That's
co-founder of Meuwly's here in Edmonton. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Mark. Yeah, how are you?
I'm awesome. I'm fantastic. It's been a day, 2 days of doing podcasts here in Edmonton, so get to, reconnect with people.
Yeah, you're set up on the 23rd floor with a view of the city. So
That's right. I will say the Edmonton downtown skyline gets nicer every time I'm here. It's you can see Rogers Arena from here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It looks a lot nicer than the parking lot that was there before. So
Yes.
Yeah. Our little city's really coming along, so I'm glad you get to see it periodically like
That's
that.
right. Yeah. How you doing, man?
Good. Yeah, things have been really busy. There's a lot happening in the food industry right now. A lot happening with all the restaurants that we work with through Meuwly's, and everyone's gearing up for holiday season and kind of the first holiday season without any rules or regulations or impact on gatherings and things like that. So we don't really know what to expect, but it's keeping us on our toes for sure.
Yeah, I know. It's the first time in a long time where there's no excuse, not to go see your in-laws and shit. It's like,
right.
Fuck. Okay, yeah, no, it totally comes to you.
You know what? We're just a little burnt out from the last 2 years of rules, we're just going to relax.
We're not mentally prepared for this quite yet. Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know what Meuwly's is, and I feel like, because I do ask a lot of people, because I'm always curious, in Edmonton it's becoming very much more of a common kind of household name, but what is Meuwly's? What's the business model behind it?
Meuwly's is a company that makes charcuterie, sausages, pickles, preserves, and sells all of the things that you want to eat with those foods. So we have what we call an artisan food market on 124th Street, which is Edmonton's up-and-coming food destination. And we feature hundreds of locally made products. So our goal as a retailer is to be the first store who will take a chance on you when you're launching your product, when you're moving from farmers market into that next stage. And we've really become a destination for people to pick up locally made, interesting, outside of the box kind of gourmet foods.
So you seem like a company that's always kind of evolving. Like, so what was the concept initially?
Yeah, the initial concept was to make charcuterie. Like, that was the focus. We thought about having the word charcuterie in the name of our business. And that was going to be what we were all about, what we promoted, what we focused on. But what we realized is you need a little more. You need a broader scope of things that you do or sell or make, just to kind of balance out some of the real peaks and valleys of the food business. If you're just one product, you're very vulnerable.
Yeah.
So we started to expand, and we started to say, well, okay, if we're going to make charcuterie, we should also do a lot of, fresh sausages or more deli-style meats, not just the really trendy, high-end cured meats, but a broader offering that allows us to reduce waste, use the whole animal. If we're bringing in sides of pork, we can use every piece of it. We can offer a more robust lineup of products for a restaurant, for a chef who's building out their menu, who wants more than just prosciutto or salami.
Right.
So we first started expanding what we were going to do based on those kind of operational decisions. Then we started listening to our customers, right? You open the door. I mean, I'm sure you've had this experience too, even with the festivals.
Listening to customers?
Right? You have people speaking at you. You can choose whether to listen to them or not, right?
Yeah.
But when we opened the door, I remember one of the first things people were coming in saying, do you sell frozen pierogies? I want pierogies to go with this garlic sausage that I'm buying right now. And I'm a little bit stubborn, those who know me. And I said, no way, we're not selling pierogies. That's not what we do here. We're a meat shop. But actually, just this week, I sent a note to my retail manager, like, hey, there's this great brand of pierogies. We should bring them in because people want it. People are interested in it. And your customers really hold the answers to your success. Right?
Well, and it's funny because sometimes you try to, I remember, this is a weird example, but with festivals, for example, we used to have it so that tickets at the door were, let's say $22, right? And people would say, well, that's expensive. And in my mind, I thought, well, yeah, but there's a lot going on in that festival. Like, there's free seminars and there's good value for that money, and it's not. And eventually I just realized, I'm like, if the customer is telling me that it's expensive, maybe I have to reevaluate how can I make it less expensive so that they feel like they're getting the value. And so, I was pushing back, and then at a certain point, it's like, okay, I need to listen to what my customer is telling me, right? And so the second we listened and we tried to, okay, how do we change it so that it feels like they're getting more value right off the bat? The relationship changed and it became a more positive one. So it's funny how you resist what the customer is saying, but then at a certain point, it's like, okay, maybe I need to hear them. So you're saying maybe you're doing that a little bit more?
I think we're doing that a lot more. I'm trying to do that more in all aspects of my life, is just be a little more open, be a little more open-minded. But I think in some ways the customers really do hold the answers to what will make them come and shop with you or attend your festivals more or tell all their friends and family about their purchase and their experience. So you need to be able to listen to them, and sometimes it takes like the data or sort of the business outcome to actually open our eyes to it, to what the customer has been saying all along, like looking at the data and seeing that, okay, people are often buying a pack of frozen sausages along with these other items, and you can see those correlations. Okay, yeah, that explains why folks were kind of asking about these things as they had a pack of sausages in their hand, because that was what they were looking for as a consumer. And then on the other hand, we as the business owners or the marketers especially need to listen and understand the customer's language and their talking points or their perspectives and values and beliefs and needs. And if you are firmly in the camp that, hey, this is the entry price for our festival, we have to charge this, maybe we just need to tweak how we're communicating that value to the customer, using their language, using their words, using their values a little bit in the messaging, right? So I've been learning a lot about that as we've gone through this business. And I think everyone in the marketing world right now is kind of scrambling to figure out what's next. How do we keep connecting with people now that some of the main social media platforms have changed and you can't just blast your message out to all your followers? So I just keep coming back to deeper, more meaningful connections with those customers, listening and considering and responding rather than just telling them, here's what we do. Yeah,
no, I agree. One of the things, and we've talked about it lots, and it's kind of like a topic that, I do want to go, get over. But, COVID was a good example of how, I talk about even Meuwly's, how you guys have evolved. But the food industry and the hospitality industry, you're experts at evolving, because you're always looking at what the market is, and then you have to kind of reflect back what the market is asking for, right? So COVID was kind of that, okay, fuck, this is really challenging. But, let's say that COVID is behind us, there's so many more challenges. And what's kind of occurred to me is that will never end. There will always be challenges that you guys are facing, that we face. Right now it's, staffing shortages, it's inflation, it's, distribution challenges. Coming out of a pandemic and being mentally kind of smacked upside the head, how are you guys able to kind of face those challenges? And then you have a unique perspective because you get to deal with so many people in the industry. How do you see other people dealing with those challenges?
Yeah, so we sell to consumers at Meuwly's, but we also sell to businesses, right? Mm-hmm. At least half of our revenue comes from wholesale relationships with restaurants, bars, hotels. So we're always watching and learning from what our partners are doing. The biggest takeaway, the biggest thing for me, and I think for a lot of the professionals that I work with, and this is another thing we wanted to chat about today, is realizing that you have to actually take care of yourself first.
Right.
So step one in navigating whatever crazy challenge comes up next is take care of yourself, allow yourself to recharge, like just to throw out buzzwords, self-care and ensuring that that's actually part of your business strategy.
Right.
Because the folks and the businesses that are still operating strongly right now after the past 2.5 years have found their own ways of managing their wellness and making that a priority and leading by example to their teams that, yes, we're going through a difficult time. We're all going to be working very hard. There will be sacrifices and obstacles, but that we support each other. We're all in this, to live a balanced, healthy life, and we're not going to sacrifice our wellness to get through the business challenge. So I think that's step one that we all learned the hard way. Right. We all started burning out in spring 2020, and sometimes we're forced to take a break, or we went into a lockdown situation where we couldn't really do anything for 2 weeks, and we started realizing that little bit of recharge was essential and helped so much. So I'm really trying to hold on to that mindset with whatever comes. The supply chain issues. Sometimes it's about being a little more confident and comfortable communicating to your customers that we won't have this thing on our menu for a while because it's stuck on a ship in the Suez Canal or whatever. Just being a little more honest and almost non-apologetic. And I say that, take that with a grain of salt, because I'm always apologizing to my customers.
Well, you're Canadian.
Right? But, having empathy for the customer, but also being kind to yourself and your team, and realizing that we're not, we don't have superhuman powers here to make things happen. So when there are brick walls that you run into, whether that's supply or staffing, being able to pay your bills on time. I think all of us who deal on credit terms have been flexible with each other, and sometimes it's just that text saying, hey, you know what, we're in a really tight place this week. We're going to be a week or so late on this invoice. We kind of appreciate that and understand that and are supporting each other. But 3 years ago, there was so much pride and ego and shame that we were all navigating as part of the business challenges. Some of that has just been washed away because we just, it was impossible to deal with that on top of everything else.
Well, you have your facade, right? This is who I am, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, fuck. And because that facade, like you said, has been washed away, it's almost like people connecting with people, and just like, here's the deal. I won't be able to pay this for 2 weeks. And they actually appreciate just getting, because now they don't have to bug you for 2 weeks. They can be like, okay, cool. And then having that honesty is, it's not easy. I mean,
but I think that's what we're learning as a food industry and society, broader society. But with whatever challenge might come up, say in January, there's going to be something for sure. There's always things that happen. I think, step one is taking care of yourself first, like put your own mask on first. Put your own oxygen mask on first, because you can't help other people if you're unconscious, right? And then second, regarding the flexibility and sort of the reinvention that you mentioned, I bring this back to listening to customers and just having a little more dialogue. Like, hey, these are the challenges we're dealing with. What do you, as our loyal supporters, what do you want to see happen here? What do you need from us the most right now?
Right.
Would you rather we close our store on Tuesdays or shorten our hours every day of the week? Like, put that up as an Instagram poll. Which one would help you still be our customer more?
Right.
So a little bit more of that honesty and openness, I think, is helping a lot. But then also, there's a deeper willingness now to throw out the rule book and just reinvent. So, so many places that probably said, we will never have an online store, or we will never use delivery apps, or we will never put our beer in cans, or whatever the situation is. Sometimes it's like it's forced our hand, and then we did that thing that we were avoiding or dreading, and realize that it can work really well. So that's a mindset shift as well, I think. In everyone who's in small business right now has had to get a little more comfortable with taking some risks, or letting go of long-held beliefs or standards or whatnot, and just being a little more flexible.
A little bit more open-minded. So speaking of the industry, and I think you have a really good handle on this, or understanding of this, which is, with the volatility and with the uncertainty, that obviously affects mental health.
Absolutely.
And that's whether you own a business, or whether you're a new hire. Like, oftentimes, like you said, like, what's better, closing on a Tuesday or reducing the hours every day? Well, both of those options affect your staff, right? They affect the ability to, it affects their certainty in life. What what's happening in the industry right now in terms of, what resources you're part of In the Weeds. What are the resources that are out there, and how are you guys communicating, that the help is there?
Yeah, so I'm going to back this up to kind of the underlying problem. So last time I saw you was a few weeks ago at the Terroir Symposium. I've learned how to pronounce that word because I heard it so many times over that conference. So Terroir Symposium is a gathering of chefs and winemakers and restaurant professionals from around the world that happened in Calgary in September. And every single panel discussion at some point, or every presentation at some point, involved a discussion of labor and labor crisis. And labor is such a economic term or a political term, but let's remove that layer and just say the people we work with are struggling. They are struggling financially, with the insane inflation that's going on. They are struggling emotionally and mentally with not just pressures of the last few years, but pressures of a lifetime in a very difficult field, right? A very stressful field. Our people are struggling to find a home in this industry right now because it is a field of work that does take a lot out of you. So because of that, because of what our people are going through, our businesses, our restaurants, our hotels, our bars, our breweries, they are also going through some challenges, right? But it comes down to the way our work and our life intersect, and there have always been some difficulties in this field. So this is not a new thing. The past 2 years have definitely put pressure on it, right? I'm glad people have kind of stopped talking about the CERB payments as the reason that no one wants to work, because I don't think it's that simple. But if you've spent 10 or 20 years in an incredibly stressful field of work for, minimum wage or dollars more than minimum wage, and suddenly you are able to stay at home and rest and be with your family and take care of yourself and rediscover your hobbies and passions and all of these other things that make life amazing, I think it does make you reevaluate what you are willing to do for $15 an hour, right? And this is an industry with tight profit margins, so it's not like there's lots of money to go around for wages and salaries. But I think that's really what's happening. So every conference, every gathering of professionals, every phone call between chefs who are buddies, there's usually a few moments where they're talking about, how are you doing with staffing? How's it going right now? Are you struggling too? And we're struggling to find those people. So now let's move on to In the Weeds. So In the Weeds started a few years ago, before all of this, but I think it has proven so critical to have organizations like this, based on what we've gone through the last few years. So In the Weeds is a group of Edmonton area hospitality professionals. It was really kickstarted by Paul Schufelt of Robert Spencer Hospitality and Sylvia and Darren of Chartier. My understanding is they were sort of the first people who got talking, and then they gathered some more of us from the community. And I think if we had a simple mission or goal, it's just to make this a healthier, happier industry to work in. How we're tackling that right now is through a lot of advocacy and awareness on mental health and wellness for restaurant professionals, but then also we're giving out counseling sessions. So we managed to raise some money just before all the events got shut down. So 2019, we had some big fundraisers. I'm glad we snuck those in at the right time. Raised a bunch of money and have been giving out basically vouchers or counseling sessions to anyone who applies through our website. So really focusing on the Edmonton area right now. But if you kind of piece that into the bigger discussion that we were just chatting about, we can't necessarily take away all the stress of working in a restaurant kitchen or being a server on the floor or being a bartender. We can't alleviate all that stress. We can start conversations about what makes a healthier, safer workplace.
Right.
We can start conversations about that self-care, about managing your workload, about finding a little more balance in your life to recharge and take care of yourself. And then really critically right now, we can provide that care, that sort of urgent care and resources to access mental health supports if you're already struggling, because so many people are struggling right now in this industry.
And so Okay, so if somebody is struggling, I guess that's always the $1 million question, and I'm always curious because, as just a guy who has no background knowledge or I have no ability to actually help somebody who's struggling with mental health, right? So I can kind of point them in directions, you know what I mean? I can sit there, I can talk, I can listen, and I think that's important for everybody to really have meaningful conversations and talk, because oftentimes I think probably sometimes just blowing off steam is helpful, but then there's the next step. So how do people, and not just in this industry, but maybe specifically in this industry, how do they kind of get that support that you're talking about?
Yeah, first I will just push back on your statement that you have no ability to help, because I think even just this, what you do in the beer community and in the food community, actually is so important and helps so much, right? Building community, building relationships, reaching out to people constantly. Every time you're in town, you're reaching out to people in your network, and even just making space to meet up, catch up, have those conversations, I think is a really key part of a community-wide mental health approach. So great work on that. Keep that up. I think it's amazing. But yeah, in terms of more, I guess probably the term would be more like acute care. I'm not a mental health professional, so yeah. I'll just share what I know and what I see. I think first part is acknowledging that there's a problem. So if you're an employer and you see that you have some staff who are struggling, I think talking with them, working with them, helping them understand and accept that maybe they're going through something, that they're struggling.
Yeah.
And then the second step is starting to look at whatever solutions are available or whatever help is available. And we were just chatting about this before we started recording, about how there are a lot of these small groups starting up, just like in the Weeds, right? There's a larger group called Not 9 to 5. There are, what's this one called? 86?
Stigma 86.
Stigma 86. Yeah. So I'm excited to learn more about them. There's Mind the Bar. Lots of different groups that are popping up all across the continent tackling some of these issues. And so in a crisis, situation, in an emergency situation, you just want to get people whatever help is closest and most accessible, and then hopefully that buys you a little bit of time to figure out what's the best way to support them. So like on our website within the Weeds, one of the first things we did is put a button on the top right corner of the page that just said, do you need help right now? And that's like a link to a list of crisis centers, hotlines, suicide hotlines on there. Just showing people some of the most accessible resources, so that if they're really struggling and they work up the will to pull up their phone and Google like mental health, chef mental health, and they happen to find our website, we want to redirect them to somewhere that can help them right now.
Yeah.
Then what we offer with our counseling sessions is, I think, sort of that next stage of someone who has acknowledged that they're struggling, has acknowledged that they would like help, and need some of those first few discussions or visits with a mental health professional to help them figure out the plan and kind of build that care plan together. So the issue has always been the cost of that, right? So we're talking about folks who typically make $15 to $20 an hour. Being able to afford therapy sessions, that's really out of reach for most people in our line of work. So that's why we went with that approach, is the discussions, and that stage one, that's happening in the kitchens. That's, like the walk-in cooler chats between a chef and an employee who's struggling, that we can try to advocate for and normalize those discussions and get people feeling a little more comfortable to talk about how they're doing, to talk about their wellness. And then just making that first wave of resources a little more accessible, removing the financial barriers to that. Yeah. That's really what we've been focusing on.
That's awesome. Do you feel that from a cultural perspective, I've never worked in a kitchen before, so I don't know. One of the things that, talking to a lot of chefs and stuff, I see it as chaos back there.
Yeah,
you guys,
it is.
But then yet what comes out is amazing, right? And so and it takes like this eclectic group of people and so many different personality types back there. Like how you guys are able to do what you do is truly a miracle on a daily basis. I feel like is the culture shifting back there where people can be more vulnerable? Because the image that I think of is like the Gordon Ramsay, like, fuck, this chicken is shit, throw it out, do this, and yelling at each other. And that doesn't really, when you're struggling mentally and you're in that environment, that's not good. So what is the overall culture shifting into something that's a little bit more respectful and maybe empathetic?
Right. Yeah, I think it is. I think there's a slow, steady change underway. There will definitely be the holdouts, the people who just feel like they can't change or refuse to change. This is the way it's always been. The line that I hate. I mean, I've hated this line probably starting in high school when you grew up in St. Albert, right?
No,
you were born in St.
My
Albert.
wife grew up in
So
St.
St. Albert, I think, was like the epicenter, like the worst hazing community of anywhere in.
I grew up in Red Deer, so
it's like
first
hockey
of all,
culture.
like, I don't mean to brag, but no, yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know if it was like the hockey culture or what it was.
Right.
People saw the movie Dazed and Confused too many times, but like that kind of entry into high school hazing, that culture was so strong in St. Albert.
Oh, yeah.
And I would ask people who are older than me, like, well, why are you doing this? It was done to you, and it was a terrible experience. Why would you do it to someone else? And they said, well, like, I paid my dues. So, this was the trade-off. Like, I went through a bad experience, and then the perk of that is apparently that you get to give someone else a bad experience. Like, what a backwards mindset. So I don't know, if you want to look inside my 15-year-old brain, I just thought, this is absurd.
Yeah.
And as I've gone up through, I was already working in restaurants at that point. As I've gone up through the restaurant world and seen some of these things, like, the way dishwashers were treated, or the way cooks were not paid overtime when they worked it, or whatever some of these things were that just didn't seem right, and you would challenge people on it, the default answer would often be, well, that's just how it's always been. I went through it, now it's their turn to go through it.
Right.
Now, like, this is not this is not a rite of passage that has to exist. There are choices being made here. So I think that's an issue in our industry. It's an issue with the pride and ego of chefs. I don't know what it's like in the beer world, if there's some of that kind of culture in breweries, but that sort of mindset of just, like, pay your dues and it'll get better. I think there are people who are still trying to act that way and run their businesses that way. But the new generation, the new workforce, like the Gen Z, I always say Gen Z, should we be saying Gen Z? The Gen Z workforce will not stand for it. I heard an expression recently, like, you have to be willing to burn the ships. Like back centuries ago, if they were invading another country by sea, like they would land on the beach and burn the ships, and it sent a message to their team, like, there's no going back. We are committed to this. We are doing this, whatever it takes. And I feel like the newest generation that's entering our workforce actually has that mindset towards the way they want to work.
Yeah.
They would rather sit at home and not be employed than be abused at work, verbally abused, or deal with harassment, than not be paid what they know their time is worth, or not be paid legally by the standards that are in place, because that's still a huge issue in our field of work. They want to be mentored and coached and given more opportunities, and all of these things that really overall means like a healthier industry to work in, a better industry to work in. So they're pushing for that. So now my business and every other food business needs to hire folks like that. We need to hire this younger workforce. So they are probably going to create a ton of change just by refusing to work in any other environment.
Right. No, and I think that's really good. What you use a term called rite of passage, which I've been really not struggling with this concept, but trying to figure it out, which is, we also live in a world where, like, should there be a rite of passage? Should there be a system? Because what I see also is somebody starts something and they think that they should be on the same level as the person that's been there for 20 years.
Right.
And I think that there has to be a journey. And where I thought about that, so two specific situations. So if you remember when we were in Jasper, it would have been last November. So Michael Elmer.
Yep.
So Master Chef. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't, like when I met him, I didn't know what being a master chef meant. I didn't think of it in terms of like master electrician or master chef means, you know, he was the third master chef in Canada.
Yep.
So that means he's one of the best chefs in the world and that he's earned that recognition. And I feel like we live in a world where if you have 20,000 followers on Instagram, that you're on par with him. And I'm like, we need to figure out a way to show respect to the people coming into industries, but also pay the respect to the people that have paid their dues and that are up there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I mean, I'm someone who started in this industry when I was 14. You know, I was working almost full time in top restaurant kitchens through high school. Did a lot at a young age. Finished culinary school. You know, I have my red seal. I have my blue seal. Gone on and kept pursuing education. I think we're also in a place now where we can look at that and say, okay, I mean, I came from a place of privilege to be able to do the things that I did at a young age, and not everyone had that opportunity. You know, Chef Allemeyer, definitely one of the most highly trained and accomplished chefs in the world. There's no doubt about that. So, are there things that our industry can offer and afford to someone like that who has pushed very hard, accomplished a lot, overcome a ton of challenges? Yeah, they should. They deserve some reward for that. They deserve a certain place, certain opportunities that we all have to earn.
Yeah.
But what we don't have to earn is, you know, a safe and inclusive workplace that takes care of our mental health. Paying people literally just like what's legally mandated, paying them their overtime or their stat pay or whatever. We shouldn't have to earn, you know, being able to take a day off if you're sick and not feel like you might lose your job over it or some of those things. So I really like that you made that point, because I think we can respect and honor these people who have gone through this journey, and we can give them, you know, the rewards and the opportunities that come with that, but then also say, let's raise the baseline for everyone.
Yeah.
Right? It's
not an either or.
Yeah, it's not a zero-sum game. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, one of the best books I read in the early days of COVID was, I think it was the
Anne of Green Gables.
Yeah, I really went to the back catalog. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You've probably read that one, right? So, and I think it was that book that first introduced to me the idea of an abundance mindset or a scarcity mindset. And I've caught myself going back to a scarcity mindset so often. But when you view the world from a place of abundance and say that there is enough and we have enough for everyone to live a great life, to have meaningful, rewarding work, to, you know, have great experiences in their career, whatever it is that they do, and however far up the chain they've kind of progressed and grown, that doesn't take away from the master chef and what they've earned, and, you know, that they paid their dues to get there. It doesn't take away from that. If anything, it's actually going to help them too, because it's just going to lift everyone up. So I think it's a really important part of the discussion, and that, again, is one of the changes that I see happening. So, you know, for example, the term chef, we value that term. That means something to us, right? It doesn't just mean that you cook. Chef comes from a root word of like head of the kitchen. You were the head of the team, the head of the kitchen, you know, you were the chief, so to speak. And that term gets thrown around a lot now that cooking and professional cooking and the culinary arts are a huge part of our pop culture. Yeah. So, you know, is everyone on Food Network a chef just because they've been given a show and they cook things on TV? People who have worked their entire life in the field would probably say no. But does language change over time, and do our understandings of these terms adapt and grow and evolve? Yeah, they do. So, that's why being able to say, hey, Michael Allmeyer is a certified master chef, he gets that title. He's earned that title, and most people have not earned that. And so let's celebrate that.
100%. Yeah.
Right?
Well, the funny thing is like literally, because I'm sitting there when I first met him, and just could not have been a nicer guy, right? And actually did do my podcast shortly after. But so that's why I had to really learn about who he was, and I had to research, and I'm like, because I thought that, Master Chef, like, did he win something on the Food Network?
Show, yeah.
Like, that's the society we live in, right? Where it's just like, and I'm like, oh my God, like, that's almost like an insult to like his accomplishments. And so how do you, and the question is, and it isn't a binary, it's either this or this, because I agree with your philosophy of living in abundance. It is, how do we live where everybody is respected, right? Like, no matter if you're day one or you've been there for 30 years, but then still honor the people that have allowed us to live the lives that we have. And so having chefs that have honored that tradition, is what makes what you do so respectable too, sure, right? So, but both things can be done at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a bit of a curve, not unlike the sort of, you don't know what you don't know, and the more you learn, the more you realize how much you have left to learn.
Yeah.
And I think as a perfect example, I've met Chef Allmeyer a couple times. He's one of the most humble people in our industry.
Which made researching him even more. I'm just like, oh, fuck, I feel like such a moron now. I'm like,
but that I think is also that's very telling. That the people who are doing this for the right reasons, they have a deep love and passion for what we do in our field of work. Just like as an example, Greg at Blind Enthusiasm. I've been able to meet Greg a bunch of times. Has always made time to chat with me and to be really present with whoever's around. Incredibly humble, an incredibly accomplished person in everything that he's done.
Yeah.
Even before getting into the beer business, like what an amazing track record that this person's had as a professional, but is very humble, very down to earth, and treats everyone with respect when you engage with them. So I think that's the lesson for me is, I don't need to be out there, defending the honor of these people who are at the pinnacle, because those people have worked at this long enough to realize that the true satisfaction and the meaningful parts kind of come from within, and the title doesn't matter that much. The honor that we sort of bestow on these people who are leaders in our field, that's all great, and recognition is important, and paying respect is important, but just that kind of basic treating people well, seeing people as as human to human rather than as executive chef to dishwasher. I think that's the change that's really needed. That's making a huge difference.
Totally. And then people actually enjoy coming to work. Figure, what I mean?
Hopefully.
That would be the idea. Okay, let's switch gears. Something that is, I think, fun, which is where we first met. So I think we would have met last November. Sorry.
Yeah.
In what was supposed to be Christmas in November, but because of this COVID thing, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but they had to kind of cancel the Christmas in November, but they had kind of enough people committed, and there was no like closures per se. Like I think we were still open to do things, and so they asked us to come up, and we partnered with a charcuterie and beer pairing, but having never met each other.
Right. And
I remember because our friend in common, Robin, who's kind of our contact at Jasper Park Lodge, me and him were sitting in the bar at JPL, and everybody because we were supposed to meet you, so everybody that walked in were just like, "Hi, Peter, how are you?" No, okay. Next person, "Hi, Peter, how are you?" And so it was one of those like, okay, at that point I hadn't done a ton of presentations. We had never met, and it was kind of like, okay, let's do this. But it was a ton of fun. I think we did well enough where we were invited back.
Right. That was the goal.
So that's, yeah, exactly. That's, yeah, set the bar low. And but what a cool experience. And then so now we're going back. So it's October now. So we'll be there in November. Chef Michael Elmer, I was looking at the group of people. He will be there.
Chef Vikram
Vij will be there. They were really good friends, and still are, I'm sure. Anyway, that's exciting. I'm excited to be doing it. I feel like not to say that I'm cocky, because I chew my nails on a daily basis and I get nervous about everything I do, including before every podcast, but I'm actually really excited for it. I think it's going to be awesome. So they have us down there for 10 days. So 3 sessions of 3 days.
Yes.
12 seminars over that time.
And we're going to eat every piece of meat and drink every beer throughout every one of those sessions.
Of course we are. Yeah.
Okay. I'll start drinking some kale juice now just to prepare for this.
Okay, so I've been there for 3 days. We do a festival there, so Jasper Beer and Spirits Festival. I've been there for 3 days, 4 days. I've never been there for 10 days. I don't know exactly how we're going to get through this. Any advice for me?
Are you still doing your morning jogs every day?
Yeah.
I think that'll help. I don't know. Yeah, we'll pace ourselves. I really love this story. Like, I love how we got here because, like you said, we had never met. That event came together very quickly, last minute, because there was a lot of uncertainty around what events could look like and how many people you could have there. So kudos to the team for putting that together, at JPL very quickly. But then basically you and I said, as you do, like, okay, let's sit down and have a beer and just come up with what we're going to do, what we're going to talk about. And it could have gone a variety of different ways, but I actually really love how we've put together this event and how we've run it every time since, because I think it's just like we were talking about before. We're not standing on some stage with, all the lowly people kind of looking up in awe at our expert wisdom. We're really approaching this session like, okay, we're gonna talk about our relationship to these foods and beers and the story behind them, and then let you decide what that means to you. And we want to hear what's your experience. What do you think of these? When you taste these things together, like, tell us out loud what's it like. So when we've done this session, it hasn't been like a seminar or a class so much as a shared experience with a lot of storytelling, a lot of laughter, a lot of fun. And I really like where we've taken that. And I think a lot of people have said that it's been one of the highlights for them because it just stripped away a lot of the tension that often comes with a formal food event or a high-end food event, right? Where people are like, what if I hold the wine glass the wrong way? They're going to laugh at me, Right. and we have really tried to create the absolute opposite experience with this event. So I think that's great, and I can't say that I walked in there with that plan. I don't know if you did. It just naturally evolved. And I think that's part of why we've had some great conversations since then, and on the podcast and everything, is just choosing to approach food and drink as a fun, interactive, human thing that doesn't have to have specific rules. Doesn't have to have a lot of etiquette. It should be about bringing people together. Yeah.
And for me, because I'm not a beer nerd, so I can't sit in front of a group and talk about necessarily all the characteristics of the beer, where I've always been fascinated from the beer perspective, and quite frankly from every industry that I deal with, is I do love the people behind it. And so when I talk about the breweries, so first of all, my thought was, okay, well, if some people are coming from Edmonton, let's get some breweries that they could stop on the way home. And if some people come from Calgary, so let's do that. So my thought was, how can I share the story of the people behind the brewery? And then if they get to meet these people, let's create that emotional connection, because that's, to me, that's the story. So many of these breweries are making world-class beer. Mm-hmm. So it's not about, okay, here's the specifics of this. To me, it's like, let's connect them emotionally, and then and that's the fun thing. Yeah. And I will say, in one of our seminars, somebody was making a pyramid out of cans. So that's the level of seriousness that we take ourselves.
Yeah, the folks at the wine event next door always get a little angry with us because our room is quite boisterous and loud.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we were talking, you know, I'm telling the story or talking about the flavor profiles in our cacciatore salami, and all of a sudden I look up and there's this mountain of your beautiful branded Alberta Beer Festival's glasses forming on the table. And I think I stopped mid-sentence and just kind of laughed, and then the whole room sort of perked up, like, what's going on, you know, like looked around. But it's meat and beer. Like that should be the way we approach these things. This should be about enjoyment, and it should be about stories, and then that's really the philosophy of Meuwly's as well. Is I want a guest who comes in our door, I want them to leave with a closer connection to the food that they're enjoying.
Yeah, totally.
You know, hearing about the people who made it, or even better, getting to meet the people who made it, I think is a great part of what we do. So, you know, events like the Beer Fest are fantastic as well, because it just brings all of these humans together and creates connection and reminds everyone that this is not, you know, this is not just an economy with things changing hands. Like, a person made that beer for you with, you know, with all of their passion and years of training and experience and trial and error, and crafted that beautiful thing, put it into a can, put a label on it, you know, and they want to know how much you enjoy that too.
Well, and that's what I love about, like, the word community. I don't know if it gets bastardized, but it's like, it should be, like, I think of it authentically, which is like, when I come to Edmonton, so first of all, like, I was born in St. Albert. I went to U of A. I love Edmonton, and I love the air. I was an Oilers fan growing up, still an Oilers fan. So when I come here, you know, it's like, I was excited because I got to go to Sherlock Holmes for lunch.
Nice.
And, you know, I see Jordan and I give him a hug. And then we walked over because Northern Chicken has their new location now. So go over and we see Matt and we say hi and stuff like that. Like, knowing that there's an authentic community is and it's not like a marketing gimmick. It's just like, you know, like, how can we genuinely help these people? One of the things I want to say before I forget, so first of all, yes, I'm excited to do Jasper. This is going to be just an amazing / disastrous 10 days. But one of the things that I just thought of was, I don't know if it was the first time or second time we were there together, but I didn't realize that you were involved with In the Weeds, because I had talked to Matt from Northern Chicken, and I talked to a few people, and obviously over COVID it was very challenging to actually get everybody together and progress. But I did want to try to use my podcast as a platform to share the story. So it was really interesting then I realized that you were one of the, you know, people really pioneering and behind In the Weeds. And that was interesting, because then it was like, okay, like, there's like an authenticity here that I thought was really, really cool. So
yeah, I think, and again, like you just said, these things should never be marketing gimmicks, because that will be very hollow. People will see through that, and it's just not a nice thing to do. But when you build your business or your, you know, even your career around human connection, community, you know, real relationships, and then supporting the people that you have those relationships with, like, truly supporting the people that you do business with, not just like optically or you know, whatever's easy. It makes the whole experience so much more rewarding, but it also builds a bit of a moat around you that a competitor can't just come and wipe out. Yeah. You know, Matt at Northern Chicken has the types, and I feel like we talked about Matt in the last podcast too, because, you know, like, what a great person, what a great business, what a great story they have. And Andrew as well, you know, the original co-founder, they have done so much for so many people, and they lead with such empathy and authenticity in the way they talk about their experiences and about their restaurant. People just truly want to support them. Yeah. It also helps that they make amazing fried chicken. But honestly, you know, when a restaurant like that and owners like that, if they have an off day, because we all have off days, people are a lot more forgiving and understanding, and they, you know, they'll reach out and say, hey, you know, it seemed like things weren't going well. Like, can I help? Yeah. As opposed to, wow, that was a disappointing experience. I'm never going back. Just the deeper, more meaningful connections with your team who work with you, with your suppliers and partners, and with your customers, I think is the best business decision you could ever make as well, right? And you can't just pretend to be doing that. You have to live it. You have to follow through on that. But I think, like, especially we're in hospitality. You can provide such good hospitality when you truly care. When you truly feel that you have a connection to those people who are coming through your door and that you want to give them a great experience. It's the best business strategy you can have.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I think Matt and Andrew, and why maybe they're good examples of what we talk about, is, they've made themselves vulnerable. They've shared their backstories, right? In ways that could have been, like, it could have not went well for them, you know what I mean? But what was nice is they shared their vulnerabilities, they shared what they were going through, and the community rallied behind them, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And probably not everybody, right? But they got to, express who they were as real people. And I know I haven't known Matt for that long, like, let's say 6 years or 7 years, but I've even just noticed a transformation in him, in his kind of journey. Is I see a happier person that is able to kind of like speak, whatever his truth is. So, but I think that's why we talk about them a lot, is like they had a lot of courage to do and say what they did. And so they're really good examples. Yeah, true leaders in our community. And going back to the industry-wide change, right? We want to see improvements in the way we work in this field, in the way we take care of our people. We want to see improvements in the way our customers can empathize with what we're going through and try to support us, and it not just be transactional. And the vulnerability and kind of authentic storytelling is probably the best tool we have to move that forward, because out there are thousands and thousands of chefs who are really struggling or just wish they could speak up and share how they're actually feeling and get some help, but are maintaining a persona. They've got this sort of brick wall persona that they feel like they need to uphold. And as soon as that gets chipped away a little bit, then the whole team and everyone around them feels a little more comfortable also being honest. So I think, like, you look at kind of the leading scholars or experts on management and leadership, and they say that authenticity is so crucial, because if you can admit when you're struggling, or if you can admit when you made a mistake, or when you're wrong about something, or when you need help, that's the first step in all of the people who look up to you being able to do the same, right? Yeah. You're now helping create a safer environment for them. So that happens first between small teams, like in a kitchen level or in a restaurant level, but then the whole transformation happens on an industry level as well. Yeah. And so I'm just grateful for people here in Edmonton and in Calgary and across the country who are leading that change, and it just starts from within and being a little more open and vulnerable. No, I agree. Awesome, man. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for having me, Mark. We always have great discussions. So it's always fun. I am looking forward to Jasper. Like I said, I'm kind of looking forward. Like, I'm scared and excited at the same time. The Germans would have a good word for that. I'm not sure what that would be. Thanks for doing this, man. I always appreciate it. So if you like hearing us chat, I guess Christmas in November, probably almost sold out already, but that's an option. And then we'll be doing something at the Jasper Beer Fest as well. Yeah, and Super Bowl weekend. Yeah, that's going to be fun. Absolutely. I'm not mentally prepared for that quite yet. Awesome. Thanks, dude. Thanks, Mark.